The room falls silent before the words even hit. Funky leans forward, hesitates, and the tension becomes almost physical. This isn't gossip. This is personal. His voice tightens, his tone hardens, and when he finally speaks, there's no caution, no politeness, only raw honesty. He flat out calls Paul a liar and makes it clear he's done holding back. Then he turns his focus to Tamar, angrily insisting she's lying about what really happened. That's the moment everything shifts. This isn't subtle shade or a vague commentary. This is Funky openly rejecting the version of events Tamar recently put into the world, and he does it with visible frustration. Within minutes, social media erupts. Clips start circulating. Comments flood in. Viewers rewind, rewatch, begin connecting dots that had been quietly sitting in the background for weeks. One question immediately takes over online: why? Now, why does Funky sound this angry, this specific, this fed up? And more importantly, what does this say about the rumors already swirling around Tamar, Mendeecees, and what allegedly happened that night? As Funky continues, he doesn't just challenge Tamar's story. He dismantles the entire framing of it. The birthday narrative, the confusion, the claim that she doesn't know what happened. According to viewers, that's when the mood turns dark. Because Funky isn't speaking like someone speculating. He's speaking like someone who was there, someone who feels dragged into a media storm, insists he never asked for. After
You started out with,
Are you aware of what really happened to you?
No, I'm
Or
not.
can you talk about
I
it?
can talk about it, but
party. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, because I'm telling you to your face, you was a bold-faced, bald-headed, goddamn liar. Okay? That meet us at Sauce. I said, y'all, I really don't want to go. I drive my car over the Sauce. By the time I get to Sauce, Zoe calls and says, Tamar said, just leave your car at her house and we gonna go to VT.
others argue it cracks open a door that can never be shut, almost instantly. Old rumors creep back in, murmurs of reports, fallout. Then even arrest speculation linked to Mendeecees' name. Nothing confirmed, nothing official, yet the timing is impossible to dismiss. By the time Funky admits he knows he'll be labeled messy for speaking out, the damage has already been done. He says people can call him messy, he'll own it, because once those words hit the internet, silence speaks louder than noise. Tamar stays quiet. Mendeecees stays quiet. And fans are left circling the question no one wants to say out loud. Did Funky just reveal the pressure happening behind the scenes? And is this why Mendeecees' career is suddenly being discussed as if it's hanging by a thread? The fallout doesn't erupt all at once. It spreads slowly, quietly. The way tension does when people realize there's no taking it back.
In front of me, okay? All of that, you at the music video shoot in your booty shorts, sitting on top of him.
After Funky's remarks begin circulating, viewers aren't focused on volume, they're focused on intention. The tone, the body language, the pauses between sentences. According to the wave of social media reactions, this didn't come across as someone chasing attention. It felt like someone responding to pressure. What immediately stands out to audiences is Funky's repeated claim that he never wanted this to become public. He frames the situation as something that happened between friends, something he would have preferred to keep private. But the issue, according to his own words, is the version of events he believes Tamar chose to release. Viewers start replaying the moment he addresses her directly, explaining that he didn't like how she presented herself as confused, unaware, or wronged without clarity. When Funky reacts to Tamar saying she doesn't know what really happened, that moment quickly becomes a focal point online. Fans argue in comment sections that this single exchange shifts how the entire situation is viewed. Some say it sounds like Funky is calling out selective storytelling. Others believe he comes across as genuinely hurt, not performative. What most people agree on is that this isn't casual commentary, it's frustration that's been building over time. Funky goes further, walking viewers through the night in question, not with emotion, but with specifics. Times, locations, decisions. According to viewers, this is where the tone turns investigative. He explains how plans changed, how locations shifted, how he repeatedly said he wanted to go home. The internet reacts strongly because details give stories weight even when they're disputed. Funky describes being asked to leave his car and go elsewhere. As that clip spreads, fans begin re-examining earlier rumors that had previously been dismissed as exaggerated or unclear. Nothing is confirmed. Nothing is proven. But the level of detail fuels speculation. Commenters start questioning why someone would fabricate this much specificity if there wasn't underlying tension. The narrative sharpens when Funky begins addressing Mendeecees directly, though not by name at first. He describes moments that made him uncomfortable, moments where, according to him, boundaries were crossed in plain sight. Viewers say this is when the situation stops feeling like gossip and starts sounding like accountability, at least in the court of public opinion. Funky says he was uncomfortable with Tamar and Mendeecees' behavior.
I get out the car and go upstairs with Tamar when we got back to her house. Because after her and Mendeecees got through kissing in the back of that goddamn car, I figured they wanted to be up there privately. That is why when we got dropped off at Tamar's house, I did not go upstairs. I got in my damn car and went home because you was sitting on his lap, damn uncomfortable. Okay? Now, if anybody know who happened and what happened to your damn teeth. So with that being said, now I give everybody permission.
Others argue the reaction is pure shock. Again, there is no confirmation, only interpretation stacked on top of interpretation. The idea that a career could be at risk does not come from a single sentence or moment. It forms through buildup, through public perception, through proximity, and through unanswered questions that refuse to settle. Fans point out that in an era where narrative travels faster than facts, simply being linked to unresolved controversy can cause damage on its own. Private discomfort was pulled into public view, and once that happened, the story stopped being about what happened that night and started becoming about who controls the narrative. The conversation does not cool down. It evolves. After Funky's words begin to sink in, viewers stop debating whether he should have spoken at all and start asking why the situation was allowed to reach this stage in the first place. Comment sections fill with people repeating the same concern in different language. This did not explode overnight. It simmered. What draws audiences deeper is the way Funky frames time. He repeatedly stresses that this was not a one-off encounter, not a single night that was misunderstood. Based on how viewers interpret his tone, he appears to be describing a pattern. Repeated hangouts, repeated discomfort, repeated moments where he says boundaries were crossed openly and without concern. This is the point where the public narrative shifts from shock to scrutiny. Fans begin questioning why certain behaviors were normalized until they suddenly were not. They ask why situations that made someone uncomfortable were allowed to continue, and why those concerns only surfaced once the story reached the internet. According to comments, when the story finally went public, it arrived fragmented instead of clear. One of the most disturbing elements for viewers is Funky's insistence that Tamar knows exactly how internet narratives work. He suggests she understands how to imply without confirming, how to spark curiosity without accepting accountability. Viewers latch onto this idea because it reframes the chaos not as accidental, but as intentional, at least in perception. Funky says Tamar does just enough to stir conversation and then pulls back. That short statement becomes one of the most quoted lines online. People replay it, caption it, and use it as a lens to reinterpret everything that followed. Some fans argue this explains why rumors escalated so quickly. Others push back, saying that speaking from trauma does not always follow clean logic. The debate intensifies, but the damage to trust is already visible. As the line circulates, users begin reconstructing the timeline using only public appearances and statements. Nothing new is introduced. No fresh allegations appear. Still, the context shifts. Viewers start seeing the night not as a mystery, but as a moment surrounded by too many witnesses, too many moving parts, and too many unanswered questions to stay contained. The most unsettling reaction comes from how audiences respond to Funky's description of going home alone. Many interpret this as intentional distance, a refusal to be present for whatever unfolded afterward. Commenters argue that this decision matters because it places responsibility elsewhere without directly assigning blame. That is where Mendeecees' name becomes unavoidable in the discussion. Not because of new claims, but because Funky's account positions Mendeecees close to the center of what followed. Again, no crimes are alleged and no outcomes are confirmed. But proximity alone becomes enough to spark speculation in an online environment that thrives on implication. Viewers notice how carefully Funky avoids drawing conclusions. Instead, he emphasizes who was present and who was not, who went upstairs and who did not. That restraint paradoxically fuels more speculation than a direct accusation ever could. Funky says Mendeecees and his friend were the ones who went upstairs. That clip spreads quickly, not because it proves anything, but because it narrows the field of questions. Online, narrowing focus is everything. Once audiences feel they know where to look, imagination fills in the gaps. Threads multiply. Theories stack. Interpretations harden. What intensifies the pressure is the absence of a counter-narrative. Tamar does not directly respond to Funky's version, and Mendeecees remains silent. Fans debate whether that silence is protective or evasive. Some argue that speaking would only escalate the situation further. Others insist that staying quiet allows speculation to harden into assumed truth. This is where the idea of a career being in danger takes hold in public discourse. Not as a verdict, but as a fear. Commenters argue that regardless of facts, association with unresolved controversy creates risk. Sponsors hesitate. Collaborators pause. Audiences shift. In entertainment, uncertainty itself can cause damage. People begin referencing past public figures whose careers stalled not because wrongdoing was proven, but because narratives were never corrected. These comparisons spread anxiety through fan communities. Suddenly, the discussion is no longer about one night. It is about long-term consequences. Funky's emotional state becomes another focal point. Viewers highlight moments where his voice tightens or cracks, interpreting them as signs of genuine hurt rather than performance. Many comment that he sounds betrayed, not only by Tamar, but by being pulled into a storm, says he never asked for. This framing resonates with audiences who feel secondary harm is often ignored. The idea that people adjacent to controversy can suffer reputational damage without agency sparks its own debate. Funky becomes both witness and casualty in this narrative. As speculation grows louder, the internet begins treating Funky's statements as a turning point rather than a revelation. Commenters argue that his words did not create the rumors. They validated the belief that something serious enough to hide might exist. Whether that belief is fair becomes secondary to its impact. Tension peaks as fans revisit the moment. Funky accepts being labeled messy. Many interpret this as resignation, not defiance, a choice to tell his version even if it costs him socially. That decision earns him support from some and criticism from others, but it ensures the conversation will not fade quietly. Meanwhile, discussions around H5-related rumors intensify. Funky never confirms any report, and viewers carefully note this. Yet the association persists. Commentators argue that once health speculation enters public discourse, it becomes nearly impossible to contain. The ethics of spreading such rumors become a heated topic, sharply dividing fans. Some argue the real issue is not the rumors themselves, but the ambiguity that allows them to grow. Others insist responsibility lies with those who amplify unverified claims. The debate turns philosophical, touching on accountability, privacy, and the cost of fame. Throughout all of this, Mendeecees remains a silent presence. His absence is felt in every thread. Some fans believe the silence is strategic, guided by legal counsel or management. Others interpret it as shock or paralysis. No consensus forms, only tension. By this stage, the story evolves beyond personalities. It becomes about systems, about how narratives are built, how silence is interpreted, and how implication can overshadow fact. Viewers express frustration that once speculation gains momentum, truth becomes almost irrelevant to public perception. The emotional weight of this phase lies in uncertainty. Not knowing who will speak next. Not knowing whether clarification will come. Not knowing how much damage has already been done. Audiences remain engaged not because they expect answers, but because unresolved tension is addictive. As this chapter settles, one reality becomes clear to viewers. Even without confirmation, even without charges, even without statements, reputations are already shifting. The question is no longer what happened that night. It is whether anyone can stop the narrative from defining the outcome. As hours turn into days, the conversation takes on a heavier tone. It is no longer driven by shock or raw emotion, but by the slow realization that something irreversible may already be unfolding. Viewers acknowledge that even if nothing new is said, the story continues quietly, subtly, in ways that do not require confirmation to leave an impact. Online discussions begin focusing on consequences that never make headlines. People talk about calls not being returned, meetings quietly postponed, and how in entertainment, uncertainty alone can change how someone is treated behind closed doors. Commenters argue careers are not always damaged by scandals. Sometimes they are damaged by unresolved questions that make decision-makers uncomfortable. This is where the narrative around Mendeecees sharpens. Not as a villain, not as a confirmed wrongdoer, but as someone suddenly surrounded by risk. Fans do not say he did anything. They say this could hurt him. They speculate about networks, sponsors, collaborators, and how association with ongoing controversy might alter perception. The language remains cautious, but the concern is unmistakable. At the same time, viewers turn back to Funky's words with renewed intensity. Not to extract new meaning, but to reassess intent. New meaning, but to reassess intent. Many now believe his frustration was not only about Tamar's interview, it was about foresight. Commenters suggest Funky recognized that once narratives are introduced without clarity, they take on a life of their own. They believe he saw the dominoes lining up and chose to speak before being crushed by them. This interpretation generates sympathy from some corners of the internet. People relate to being pulled into someone else's story without consent. They point out how often secondary figures absorb damage simply through proximity. Funky in this framing becomes less of an instigator and more of a warning signal. Others reject that interpretation entirely. They argue that by speaking publicly, he amplified the speculation he claims to resent. That restraint would have limited the spread. That airing discomfort does not erase responsibility for fallout. This argument grows increasingly heated, splitting audiences into camps. Amid this back and forth, Tamar's silence remains the most polarizing element. Supporters frame it as restraint, even dignity. They argue that responding to every interpretation would only validate speculation. As debates unfold, the emotional tone darkens. Early excitement gives way to discomfort. Many viewers admit they feel uneasy consuming the story but cannot look away. They recognize the human cost, yet remain drawn to unresolved tension. That conflict between empathy and curiosity defines this phase of the saga. Mendeecees continued. Silence takes on new interpretations as the narrative continues to evolve quietly. Others say the silence is tactical. Some viewers argue legal strategy explains the quiet one misstep could worsen public perception. Others view silence as a gamble that lets rumors calcify into assumed fact. Consensus is absent. Speculation multiplies. Industry-savvy commenters explain how reputations are managed behind closed doors, noting risk assessments, brand safety meetings, and backstage calculus that often precede public statements. Once a name becomes linked to unresolved controversy, Funky's acceptance of being labeled messy resurfaces in those debates. What once read as bravado now looks like resignation. Viewers suggest he recognized that once he spoke, he could not control how his words would be used. Accepting the label appears as a sacrifice, protecting his account even if it costs him socially. That reframing raises emotional stakes. Fans argue whether candor is worth collateral damage. Is silence self-preservation or complicity? As days pass, the story shifts from what occurred to what might never be clarified. Some speculate that no definitive account will emerge and that the narrative will simply fade, leaving assumptions and altered impressions. That prospect unsettles viewers more than any single allegation. The thought that a career could be reshaped without a single verified fact becomes the quiet horror at the center of discussion. Fans remind each other how fragile public standing is and how years of work can be overshadowed. Absence of closure sustains engagement. People return to the story seeking clarity, bracing for escalation, fearing silence. The saga becomes a cautionary tale about visibility's how stories outrun truth, how implication outpaces intention, and how, once the internet decides something feels off, reversing that feeling is nearly impossible. Many realize that even if denials arrive, the narrative already influenced perception. Online discussion migrates to consequences that never make headlines: unreturned calls, postponed meetings, cautious casting. Commenters stress that careers sometimes suffer from unresolved questions rather than proven wrongdoing. This sharpens the narrative around Mendeecees, not as a convicted villain, but as someone encircled by risk. Fans do not claim he committed a crime. They warn that association with controversy can harm deals. The language stays careful, but the concern persists. Funky's earlier frustration is reinterpreted. Some say his outburst aimed to disrupt the domino effect, forcing clarity before implication did its worst. Others insist his public airing accelerated speculation and amplified the rumors he disdains. Both readings coexist, neither proven. Tamar's silence becomes divisive. Supporters see restraint. Critics see evasion. In modern media, silence rarely reads as neutral. The pressure is immense. Few still ask what actually happened. Audiences ask who will blink first, who will speak to end the stalemate. Resolution becomes less about truth than narrative control. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. Closure often arrives through exhaustion, attention shifting rather than facts. Many expect the saga to end without clarity, fading as interest moves elsewhere. Yet that outcome still unsettles viewers. Some reflect on their own complicity, wondering whether consuming these narratives rewards ambiguity and punishes vulnerability. Others argue public figures accept scrutiny as visibility's cost. That split mirrors a larger debate about accountability versus empathy. Health-related speculation remains a sensitive fault line. Many insist certain topics should never be entertainment without confirmation. As speculation intensifies, Mendeecees stays silent. His absence is noted across threads. Some suspect legal caution. Others read shock or paralysis. No consensus emerges. The story morphs from personalities into systems, how narratives are constructed, how silence is decoded, how implication can overshadow fact. Viewers express frustration that once speculation gains traction, truth becomes secondary to perception. The emotional current is uncertainty. No one knows who will speak or whether clarification will arrive. Audiences remain glued not out of hope for answers, but because unresolved tension is compelling. The narrative hardens. What began with "what if" morphs into a resigned "what now?" People treat the situation as strategic theater rather than an investigation. That shift reframes the players. Funky is recast as witness and casualty as someone who spoke despite the cost. Tamar's silence reads as dignity or avoidance. Mendeecees becomes a symbol of collateral risk rather than a confirmed actor in wrongdoing. Fans argue which approach is wisest, but most concede none can fully control how the story is consumed. Reaction cycles accelerate reaction videos to reaction videos. Threads quoting threads' story sustains itself without new revelations. Momentum feeds momentum. Small cues tone, pause. A line become fuel for interpretation. Timing becomes a weapon. Every late silence, every delayed reply is magnified into meaning. The result is relentless pressure that both creates and punishes ambiguity. There is no safe move. Speaking risks inflaming speculation. Silence risks letting rumor calcify. Denial risks fueling skepticism. Spectators watch, refresh, wait. The saga has altered perceptions regardless of proof. It reshaped reputations through implication, not facts, as this chapter settles. The central question is not merely what happened, but how much of this narrative is engineered by the internet. The answer feels bleak. Perception drives outcome. If you form an opinion from public information, weigh it carefully. Comment responsibly. Public narratives can wound as much as truths. Industry consequences ripple quietly. Sponsors reassess agreements. Collaborators postpone projects. Networks perform discreet checks. And managers calculate exposure. Commenters recall public figures who lost momentum not from verdicts, but from unresolved implication projects deferred. Offers rescinded. Reputations stained by insinuation rather than proof. For Funky, Tamar, and Mendeecees, that risk becomes a persistent shadow. Viewers fear long-term ripple effects. Fewer auditions, cautious meetings, stalled campaigns, and quiet cancellations. The calculus of career damage is often private and slow. Measurable in missed calls and delayed emails, not headlines. Debates about responsibility sharpen. Some admonish content amplifiers for turning vague whispers into viral narratives. Others point to the ecosystem. Editors chasing clicks. Creators trimming clips for drama, and platforms rewarding engagement over nuance. Legal teams and PR advisors choose silence to avoid creating fresh liabilities, while voices in comment sections demand answers. The moral question intensifies. Does public curiosity justify adding pressure to lives already strained by ambiguity? Many feel it does not. This moment asks more than immediate entertainment today.